Today I want to talk about basically understanding our cues when it's time to, let's say, change. Okay? Now, what I'm getting at basically is when we go through let's say in the course of our life, we have a middle life crisis. You know, you reach a certain age where all of a sudden things start changing in you. Yeah, you want to start living your life different. Some people say they revert back to being children almost. Not back to children, but back to their party years. Yeah, they're trying to recapture youth. They're trying to live out their youth one last time before they, let's say, get old. Okay? Now, see, these are certain callings. And this is how society has addressed these concerns. All right? And you know, you've heard the old stereotypes. The midlife crisis. Okay? You get into your mid-40s, maybe your early 50s, certain times it kicks in. And all of a sudden, you do things out of the ordinary, okay? Usually, somebody might end up buying themselves a motorcycle. They just want to be cool again, all right? Or they want to get that souped-up, cool sports car, you know what I mean, right? Yeah, they go all out of their way. They spend half their pension, and they get a cool car. You know, the old muscle cars. Maybe something they had when they were teenagers, let's say, yeah. And in some cases, too, these happily married couples at some points even decide to have affairs. Okay, you hear about these, too, where sometimes all of a sudden you get these certain 7-year itches and the couples, whether it be either side, may decide they want to have affairs. Okay, usually their marriages suffer because of these infidelities. So a lot of different things happen during a midlife crisis. Yeah. But now this is basically how we understand what happened in these midlife crises. Now, the reason I'm saying this and leading up to this right now is the fact that, you know, we have let's say, the awakening and the calling within our soul. As Carl Jung said, there's an individualization that takes place in everybody, not just INFJs, not just introverted intuitives. Every human being goes to a point where they want to authenticate themselves, true authentication, where they integrate their shadows, let's say, and do certain things. Now, that's exactly what that steers me into. The whole idea of how we integrate the shadow. How do we actually do this during these midlife crises that I talked about just earlier? This is the societal, cultural idea of how shadows get integrated. They just happen. You figure all of a sudden somebody changes. You know, you're responsible, you're an adult, you're living your life, you're raising your family in a certain way. And all of a sudden you reach a certain age, you start reverting back to a certain way. Like I said, you want to buy these motorcycles and these cars and do certain things, okay? Maybe spend your money, start traveling. These are inadvertent ways that we typically integrate shadows. Yeah, that's right. Certain selves, certain awarenesses, certain consciousness, dark consciousness that we've had repressed most of our life, most of our young, responsible life, start wanting to come back into the limelight. Yeah, and these shadows are going to basically get us into these shadow functions, which change us a little bit. And this is typical with these type of midlife crises. And that's what's going on, people. This is part of their individualization, but it's going sideways. It's going into a direction that's not what's truly intended to be. You see, it's almost being bent and distorted. Yeah, because what these changes are not outer reaches for more stimulation, not outer reaches for, let's say, excitement. I mean, that's where they're being funneled. That's where they're being shown. But in reality, these individualizations are internal. They're deeply internal. They're introspective. And they're also very spiritual changes. Okay? Now, typically, the introverted intuitive types recognize this. And typically, deep introverted intuitive types see this for what it is. Now, at these moments, these changes happen to these types, okay? I'm going to talk about the INFJ in particular. Being that this is the INFJ experience, I'm going to talk about that today, okay? Now, understand that that's exactly what happens, is that You have to realize that it's not an external draw, that it's internal. That these changes within us that we're looking for, these changes are the authentication, the authentication of our soul. Okay? As Carl Jung did say, I mean, bringing having to integrate the shadows from the unconsciousness into the consciousness in order to like see them for what they are, to integrate them in a healthy way. Okay? There's a whole other chapter on what Carl Jung meant by that. Okay? Bottom line is these changes, these midlife crises that we say they're not that way. They should be internal. These should be fought, and the changes have to come within. Now, the reason it doesn't happen this way typically is because it's a painful one. The true authentication changes within you can be spiritually painful, because all of a sudden you have to start killing the ego in a sense, because you've been changed. You've been altered by society. We've been culturalized. We've been kind of changed into what society wanted us to be. So during these changes, complete changes have to happen, and they have to happen at almost like right within the soul itself. Okay, we have to bare our soul basically to our Creator in so many ways, and these processes take a lot of self-examination, and a lot of times it's depleting. It feels as though we're starving. We're being robbed of our individualization. We're being kind of taken apart in a sense. I'm talking to the core of our spirit, okay? And sometimes these take a while. Now, only the true warriors, the true spiritual warrior can handle this, truly. And this true spiritual warrior typically are introverted intuitives. Yeah, because for one thing, they're already internal. They're already within their own self anyway. They already are deeply introspective in themselves anyway. So typically, introverted intuitives, spiritually based ones that have proclivities to their spirituality are going to see these things. And they're going to want to gear down that way. Okay? But it is something in the psyche in all human beings to want to change, to want to individualize. All right? It is all part of that authentication and awakening within our soul. Okay? Which we've talked about before. But just understand, people, that true authentication takes a lot of self-sacrifice, and instead of indulging into going and finding more excitement, instead of filling these senses, no, we have to do the opposite. In order to truly authenticate and find our true selves, it takes sacrifice. Yeah, it takes us having nowhere to go, finding no stimulation in all of these things. Now, some people might run out and get their motorcycles, their bikes. They might get their cars thinking if they just drive around enough, if they just race around enough, have enough affairs, things like that, that's going to save them. But it's only going to make them more, let's say, hungry, spiritually hungry. Then nothing's ever going to be enough. And I told you, now they go down that whole rabbit hole of just wanting to consume more and more because they're reaching for the wrong thing. Okay? Yeah, they're reaching for that wrong sustenance. But by facing things internally, spiritually, and fighting through it, and actually facing it, you'll find peace of mind, and your true authentication will emerge at this point here. And during these authentications, you might think to yourself, well, how do you know you changed? How do you know you've become the person that you're intending to be? A lot of times it's because we're going to start seeing the world for what it is. In so many ways, you start just seeing the world different. You just start seeing society for the craziness that it truly is. Now, I'm going to go on record as saying right now, people, in my opinion, good majority of the world is insane, is deeply insane. And I don't mean that to be insultive. I don't mean that to be critical of the human race, but you can see it all around. You can see that civilizations go through certain cycles, and world history has shown us time and time again the insanity where human beings go as a collective. So when you start recognizing that for what it is, Start seeing the world for the craziness, for the insanity that it truly is. And you basically want to distance yourself from that, want to be separate from that, want to be in the world but not of the world. These are moments that you know that you're authenticating, because you want to be in the world but not part of it anymore. Yeah. When you can't agree, when the world as it is does not resonate with you anymore. Yeah. These are some of the reasons that you'll know that you're authenticating, that you're becoming real. And at this point here, your energies will draw you to people of like mind. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. You don't have to be alone in that. If you want to, of course you can. You know, a lot of times we're solitary people and we get our sustenance from our own internal being. But the more we find our authentication, the more our spirit changes, the more our body changes, our whole nervous system changes to adapt to our mind and our soul. Yeah. And eventually, yeah, we'll start throwing out proper energies and we'll attract people that align with us. You know, if we want to do that, that is, okay. But understand that perseverance and finding your true self and really working to authenticate is not an easy path. It truly isn't. And but the thing is, going down the path of just consuming and having it easy in that way is actually may seem more gratifying on the outside, but the more somebody has to reach for external validation and external thrills, this is an actual reflection on how truly empty they are in their spirit. Okay? Put that on it. Put that on a fortune cookie. There you go, people. Okay, so people, thank you so much. Thank you so much for hanging around with me again, for hanging around with me and just kind of gracing me with your wonderful presence again. So people, thank you so much for that. And I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting this channel, because you have actually created this channel into a formidable, real channel, basically. And it's not just my channel, it's all of our channel. Whoever supports this channel, it's ours. Yeah, that's right. So after saying that, people, thank you again. And until the next time, have yourself a wonderful rest of your day.